This is the TBS Evening News with Marcia Ladendorf, Don Miller, meteorologist Dallas Raines, and sports with Bob Kurtz.
Good evening. Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger this evening attacked critics of the administration's military policies. In a speech to members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars in New York, Weinberger said those critics threatened to deprive American soldiers of the tools needed to defend the country. Weinberger said he gets angry when he hears suggestions that U.S. forces can make do with unsophisticated and expensive weapons. He claims the critics don't understand that the Soviets have sophisticated weapons that threaten our security. His speech came just a few hours after President Reagan and presidential candidate John Glenn discussed military policy at the Veterans Convention. Dean Reynolds reports.
Ronald Reagan, just weeks away from what his aides uniformly believe will be a re-election announcement. And John Glenn, the astronaut turned politician who is in hot pursuit of Mr. Reagan's job, in the same spotlight. On this occasion, the debate was over military strategy and foreign policy.
New equipment is now entering the inventory. Training is way up. Maintenance backlogs are being reduced and combat readiness rates. We've made real progress, and I'm delighted to report it's across the board. America is safer and more secure today than 3 years ago.
If we don't know what we want to accomplish in the world and what interests we need to defend,
we know which weapons systems to buy. The answer is very simple. We can't. There have been some charges made that we're building weapons and spending money on defense, but we don't have any plan. So we're just building weapons like you'd go in and shop for something off the counter and say, let's buy that or buy that. That isn't true.
and yet for too long, that's just how we've gone about our defense planning. Instead of setting clear and reasonable foreign policy objectives and
a military strategy to achieve them, we've put the military cart before the foreign policy horse.
Overall, the reception for the president was warm, while that for Glenn, a veteran of 149 combat missions in World War II and Korea, was cooler.
Since that applause is coming from veterans, I have to ask, is it for how I'm doing my job or how I'm doing on the Late Late Show in Hellcats of the Navy? Sometimes I get the feeling that perhaps those who are not veterans of foreign wars have mistaken ideas about those of us who are.
somehow people look at us and think we're always seen as itching for a battle. We're somehow spoiling for a fight all the time.
Because you've been in war, you have some great desire to get into another one. You and I know that nothing could be any further from the truth than that.
I know of no more peace-loving people in the world than those who have known the horrors of combat.
And we don't need to watch late-night television to find out what it's like.
Mr. Reagan spoke to a full House, while Senator Glenn got about 3/4 of that, a fact that did not go unnoticed by smiling White House aides who were generally pleased with this first Reagan-Glenn political face-off. Dean Reynolds, CNN, New Orleans.
An Oklahoma congressman charged today that the Defense Department's method of getting rid of hazardous wastes could threaten public health. Representative Mike Sinar, chairman of the House Subcommittee on Government Operations, says the Pentagon doesn't seem to care what happens to waste once military bases. Sinar says 2 companies hired to dispose of the waste are under indictment now, and 2 others are being investigated. One witness told the committee her child has been affected by drinking contaminated water. But a Defense Department official who testified argued that the Pentagon is doing all it can, and that making sure every contractor does every disposal job properly would cost too much money.
French paratroopers have set up defenses on a line across central Chad with the apparent warning that Libya better not cross that line. Now more than 700 French soldiers in Chad, up from 180, and an estimated 200 have already gone to the town of Salal on the front line. French troops are also in the town of Abechi to the west. The French are officially there to train Chadian soldiers, but they're under orders to return fire if attacked by anti-government rebels and Libyan troops. So far, though, the front is quiet.
Washington estimates there are now more than 2,500 Libyan soldiers fighting in Chad. CNN Pentagon correspondent Charles Bierbauer has more.
Gaddafi has denied that he has sent either troops or military equipment to Chad. But the Reagan administration not only rejects that, it also says Libya's force is growing. Last week, the U.S. estimated 2,000 Libyan troops in Chad. Now, State Department spokesman Alan Romberg says there are more.
Carrying a minimum of 2,500 Libyans in Chad, south of the Aouzou Strip. Might note that this is a buildup of about 2,000 over the last couple.
Earlier in the fighting, a captured Libyan pilot was put on show in Chad to dispute Gaddafi's claim. In addition, U.S. intelligence has estimated a rebel force of up to 2,000 taking part in the siege and recapture last week of the Chadian town of Fayal-Arjau. Spokesman Romberg also cataloged the equipment that Gaddafi has sent with his troops.
That Libyan equipment includes tanks, APCs, trucks, tank transporters, jeeps, artillery, multiple rocket launchers, attack helicopters, transport helicopters, and light transport aircraft.
The Libyans have perhaps the best equipped force in the region. U.S. aircraft carriers operating near the Libyan coast regularly encounter Soviet MiG fighters and Sukhoi attack planes. Sukhoi light bombers, along with Hind helicopters, which carried out much of the aerial bombing of Fayal-Arjau. Gaddafi's Air Force has over 500 combat aircraft, mostly Soviet, but also with a large component of French Mirages. Even with a total armed force of 65,000, Libya to have far more hardware than it can effectively put into the field. Intelligence reports say a large column of armored vehicles surrounded Fayal-Arjau. The armor included about a dozen Soviet-built T-62 and T-72 tanks. Gaddafi's army, however, has nearly 3,000 tanks and 400 more on order. Just how much Gaddafi could or would send to battle Chad is uncertain, but the mismatch is not. Chad, with a population half again larger than Libya's, has an armed force only 1/20 of its size. And with the arms from the U.S. and France, Chad cannot begin to match the firepower which the Soviets have provided Libya. As one